under the current circumstances, the two-state solution is impossible.
Right.
And the only reason why I'm saying that the two-state solution may not be over is because just as there was a political decision to build settlements, there could be a political decision to dismantle settlements. But the question is the following. Why would Israel stop building settlements? Why would Israel end the occupation? And I don't think there is any rational answer that could be possible. Israel has no incentives to end the occupation, because no matter what, they keep being rewarded. The significance of the Kerry speech was not the whole content. We totally disagree with several points he made. But the fact that a US Secretary of State could come out to tell Israel you have to make a choice. Now, we disagree that in any scenario there could be a Jewish and democratic state. We don't think that's possible, but that's up to us. I mean, Israel, if they want to call themselves a Jewish, Messianic, I don't know, state, it's up to them. But don't ask me to recognize it. What's particularly shameful is that Jews, wherever they were, they fought for having secular states for everyone.
That's correct.
There are many states in the US where you cannot have a cross in the school, even though 99% of the kids are Christians, which is fine. I'm not against it. It's but it's the fact that the US, which is a country that does not define itself for being for a particular group, may support the idea of a Jewish state in Israel, is not something very encouraging. Now, what's a two-state solution about? The two-state solution is a Palestinian concession. It's recognition of Israel over 78% of historic Palestine. It's not easy. I myself, I may not be, I don't think it's easy for me to come and advocate for a solution that says that Haifa and Jaffa are part of Israel. And I'm not saying that's a just solution. I'm saying that's a fair solution. I'm saying that's a solution that is acceptable as far as the rights of everyone involved are respected, including Palestinian citizens of Israel. Where are we now? We have the French International Conference on January 15. Do we believe we're going to free Palestine after this conference? No. But we think it's an important attempt, because clearly bilateral negotiations brokered by the US failed, and we need to have a new approach. A new approach whereby we solve all the mistakes of previous agreements. And the main mistake we had in previous agreements is that everything, or let's say the implementation of agreements, was left to the parties without any mechanism of implementation or accountability. That's something that has to change. And that's why we believe that a multilateral approach in terms of bringing the parties, it's much better than a bilateral negotiation between occupier and occupied. Because at the end of the day, the whole logic of the peace process is not a logic that encourages Israel to make any kind of concession. And if they could be called concessions, because they're obligations rather than concessions. So that's where we are now. We have some success internationally, that's true. We are now at the UN. We joined 42 international treaties. We are at the International Criminal Court. There's a lot more to be done. Palestinians will remain here. Between the river and the sea, all of historic Palestine, we're 50%. The Israelis will have to make a choice. We are fine with 2 states on the 67 border. We are fine with one democratic state. We are not ideologically committed to one or the other. We are committed with our rights. Now, we believe that through this painful concession of recognizing Israel over 78% of historic Palestine, we could achieve our rights. We didn't. And I think the international community, they used to tell us back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, if you go for everything, you're going to get nothing. So we accepted the 2-state solution. And I think now it's going the other way around. I think someone should tell Israel, if you want to go for everything, you're going to get nothing. That's somehow what John Kerry told them. And I think that's what scared them and made them very upset. I'll stop here because of time issues. And if there is anything that I think it's important to tell you and you didn't ask about, I'm going to say that.
So I think when you were talking about fixing the mistake of past agreements, you were talking about perhaps Oslo. Are there specific? Do you have a? Well, obviously you can't tell strangers what your negotiating position is, but are there 1 or 2 of the parts of the unfinished business of Oslo that you think should get priority? Is settlements one of those?
First of all, I can't claim that we're in love with Oslo, because we're not.
Okay.
Oslo was an agreement made in a very particular period of time. That was an interim agreement for 5 years, and was supposed to lead to an independent Palestinian state after the 5 years. The interim period was supposed to end by the year 1999. We're late. But what we say about Oslo is that with all its problems and mistakes, it makes no sense to negotiate any new agreements if whatever has been agreed in the past is not implemented. I mean, Oslo is an awful agreement, fine, I agree personally. But I can tell you, if Oslo was implemented, our position now would be much better. Oslo says that Israel was supposed to withdraw from everywhere with the exception of Jerusalem and the built-up area of settlements before any final status agreement takes place. So, the main mistake, once again, is lack of accountability. And Israel has a culture of impunity. Now they are fighting state by state on the issue of BDS. It's ridiculous. You are telling me renounce violence. We renounce violence. And then what else? I have the right to take non-violent action. I have the right to take legal action. I have the right to take diplomatic action. And the thing is that we are being punished for taking non-violent measures. That this delegitimizes Israel. It doesn't delegitimize anything. Okay, it delegitimizes settlements, apartheid, racism. Of course it does. We wouldn't take part in something that would legitimize all of this. But the main issue with Oslo, again, is lack of accountability.
I got a question for you. There's continual discussion that this is a situation between the Israelis and the Palestinians. The rest of the world should leave them alone to negotiate, but the parties are obviously not equal. And I mean, your comment about multilateral approach being needed, it seems as though the two parties will never do anything, and it really needs to be imposed by the UN or a multilateral. Somebody on the outside really has to sit down and say, you're behaving badly, both of you, and here's what has to be done, or nothing will ever happen.
There are two things. the final status agreement will eventually be signed between Israelis and Palestinians. But the implementation of international law is not up to the parties, it's a law. When you're telling me about settlements and someone comes out and says settlements are up to negotiations, hell no. It's a war crime according to international law. So I'm not going to negotiate over that. That not a single refugee will go back to Israel. Who are you? It's a war crime according to international law. So I'm not going to negotiate over that. That not a single refugee will go back to Israel. Who are you to say that? It's true. I mean, we can negotiate an implementation of the right of return. But if an individual wants to go back to his land or her land, they have the right to do so. I have no right to negotiate and saying that an individual right will not be achieved. Now, what the international community has to do is, first of all, ensure that there will be accountability. So there are consequences for not moving ahead. And the second part deals with, if you give the right incentives, how the parties are going to move. I can tell you, Palestinians are way more mature and ready for a just and lasting peace with Israel and the Israelis.
I get that impression
Way
after just a
more.
week.
Way more. Because if I were an Israeli, I mean, if any of us was Netanyahu, would you be different than his? I don't think so.
I wouldn't even be a Facebook friend of his.
But I think Netanyahu is doing what any pragmatic leader would do. The guy gets support internationally. He says Israel is being isolated. No, it's not being isolated. This last resolution of the security, I mean, if he wanted to make Israelis believe that the Security Council was going to support settlements, he's mistaken. But at the same time that they are voting against settlements, they are opening new economic tracks with Israelis. So no, Israel is not isolated. That's not true. The guy gets rewarded for doing what he's doing. Can you believe that Israel chairs the legal committee in the UN?
You're kidding.
I'm
The
not
most
kidding.
anti-Israel body in the world, to the UN. They hate Israel, right?
They chair the legal committee, the sixth committee. What isolation?
It's rotating, right?
Yeah, but it's rotating per year.
So there's
So now someone who is a settler who doesn't believe in the two-state solution is sitting in the legal committee.
that's rather ironic.
A moment ago, I thought I heard you say that you guys would not recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Did I hear you say that correctly?
Yeah.
What about under a two-state solution, where the 1967 borders are implemented?
Listen, one thing is being a very pragmatic politician and saying there is international support for a two-state solution. There is no legal claim whatsoever by Israel or legal rights by Israel over any inch of the occupied territory of 1967, West Bank and Gaza, including East Jerusalem. And something else is joining the Zionist movement. We are not Zionists. We have our own narrative. I think there is a difference between Palestine and the state of Palestine. Because those who are living in Israel now, 1.5, some people will say 1.7 million people, are not strangers to. And we are responsible for that. It's true, they didn't elect us, whatever, but we are not going to sign an agreement that will legitimize what even the US State Department defines as institutionalized discrimination.
What about the notion, and I'm not agreeing with this or disagreeing with it,
fine.
but the idea that it's the Jewish, because I actually asked somebody this before, it's the Jewish historical homeland. What do you say to people that say, well, it's the Jewish historical homeland, that's why we should have it as our national Jewish state? What would your response to that be?
They are a state recognized in the UN, and we recognize a state the same way the UN recognizes Israel. There's no difference between my recognition and the US recognition. But let me give you an example. In 1979, Israel and Egypt signed the Camp David Agreement. Why didn't the Israelis bring this issue up with the Egyptians? In 1993, we signed the Oslo Agreement. Why didn't they include this there? In 1994, we signed the Jordanians signed the Wadi Araba Agreement with the Israelis. Why didn't they include this there? Why it's just now that you're asking me to thank God for being occupied by the Israelis and telling them it's true. This is the land of the Jewish people and I have to be thankful for being here. Please give me somewhere there. No. Now, they're a sovereign state. They can define themselves the way they want. We're not telling them, don't define yourself, it's up to them. They're going to have their own issues. But if you tell me Jewish state, I mean, I don't think there is even an agreement within Israel what's the meaning of a Jewish state. It's a Jewish state of Tel Aviv or the one of Me'asharim in West Jerusalem. So don't get me involved with your issues.
And it is a new demand.
It's a non-issue. For us, it's a non-issue. When people talk about the Jew, it's a non-issue. For us, the issues are clear. Refugees, Jerusalem, security, water or natural resources, borders. We want an open city in Jerusalem. We don't want an exclusive Muslim or Christian or whatever city. So Jewish state, it's a non-issue. Like once I was debating an Israeli diplomat, and she was smart enough to bring out the idea of Jewish refugees. That there were also Jewish refugees from Arab countries. So my answer were two things. I said, first of all, that's the most anti-Zionist comment I've ever heard. Because if you claim that Palestine is their land, you cannot be a refugee in your own land. But if those people, they feel Iraqi or Egyptian or Lebanese or Syrian, we're going to do everything possible for them to return. And facilitate their return for them to get compensation. We could not have a different position. But the Israelis, they try to compare both. And then you're telling me this is the center in your homeland. And
Yeah.
So you said you can't be a refugee in your own homeland. So like we visited the Ida refugee. Did I pronounce that right? Ida, sorry. Ida refugee camp. Were you saying those are not refugees?
no.
They're
They are.
displaced across
They're
an
displaced.
internationally recognized border
Okay.
of the Green Line, the Armistice Line.
Okay. Just making sure I'm clear about
No,
that.
no, no. They are listen, I'm not saying that there could not be Jewish refugees.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is that under their definition, they could not be refugees.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Is there-
Now, if there is anyone that wants to go back to Iraq, I mean, first of all, it's not our issue. I mean, it's an issue with Iraq. But if they ask for our opinion, we may talk to the Iraqis if they want to return.
It seems like the political situation in Palestine is quite uncertain. That President Abbas is getting older. There's a lot of discussion about who or what comes next. Has there been thoughts floated of just finally saying, fine, Oslo is over, have the Israelis come back in and fully occupy instead of outsourcing the...
I think there are many people that would love to do that.
Yeah, and in the negotiating team, have there been discussions of dismantling the PA and requiring the Israelis to come in and start paying a bit more for the cost of occupation? Because right now it seems like a lot of the things that Israel would be doing are being done by the PA. On their behalf. So is that something that Abbas has been thinking about? Like, both because who knows what's going to come next in terms of Palestinian leadership?
Yeah, I mean, people that say, oh, it's very easy, dissolve the PA, Israel will come back,
No,
they'll take responsibility. They are delusional. They are not going to take responsibility.
of course not.
Now, if your question is if there are thoughts, of course, there are many thoughts. If your question is there have been some work on this area, of course. We've gone public on it. I personally haven't worked on this, but I know of people that they can do. But I think many things could change within few weeks.
Yeah.
What if your country moves the embassy to Jerusalem?
Oh,
That's end. That's end. I mean, I cannot announce anything because the Palestinian leadership will have to meet and decide something. But I can tell you, it will make no sense to talk about a two-state solution.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, again, that the one-state solution is an immediate political program we could follow. But it would make no sense to talk two states.
And thinking about Trump, have you guys in the negotiating team been in, I know the person he's appointing as his chief negotiator is spent some time in the settlement. Obviously his ambassador selection is also very involved in the settlement enterprise. Has there been conversations between the incoming Trump administration and the
Are we on the record or off the record?
off the record? Are you?
Absolutely off.
The thing is that we don't know where we're the partners in this room. So. But we may. I mean, we're trying our best. We hope that the U.S. will remain a state of its institutions rather than just going nuts with. Because I'm sure that before he announces moving the embassy, someone from the security agencies will come and will say, listen, we're going to have hell in 57 armed Muslim countries, don't do it.
There was a resolution that some Republican moron proposed. Oh, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio proposed legislation that would cut security for all U.S. embassies in half unless the Israeli embassy, the U.S. embassy in Israel is moved to Jerusalem.
Let them do that. But I think U.S. voters, it's an internal U.S. issue with it. I think U.S. voters, they have to realize when they and ask the question of who are they representing.
AIPAC.
No, that's even worse than APEC. These are more extreme.
I think AIPAC. No, once I mean I used to years ago meet or accept to meet with groups that were brought here by AIPAC. I stopped doing that because, or my office would stop doing this because we realized that they would take them for a week to Israel, and then they would ask us to meet in the American colony for an hour, so then they could say we saw both sides. So it didn't make any sense, so we stopped doing it.
Is Rawabi still, we're headed to Rawabi?
No, they don't. Usually they don't go to Rawabi, but the American Jewish Committee, they go to Rawabi. But AIPAC usually no, it's just East Jerusalem. They don't get into it. Now, once I told the delegation, they had 2 AIPAC people there. I think they were congressmen. And I said something like, you realize that according to your own laws that you have approved because of these people, you are meeting now with a member of a terrorist organization that needs of a special waiver from President Obama if he wants to visit the U.S.
Which terrorist organization talking
PLO.
PLO. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Like
Yeah,
if I can ask that question next. I was just going to say, what would you say to people back home? Because we're basically going back home and we're going to convey messages to people. And if we were to say to somebody, we met with somebody from the PLO, people say, oh, that's a terrorist organization. What would you say that you would want us to say in response to that? Are you a terrorist organization?
We're the same terrorist organization that signed the Oslo Agreement and that has security cooperation with Israel.
Yeah. So basically the acts of violence have been renounced, and now it's all negotiation and non-violence.
But here it is. We renounce violence, right?
Yeah, renounce, yeah.
Officially.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have an official PLO body coordinating actions of violence against Israel, right? But you cannot think for a second that you can have a whole nation under occupation and have flowers in the smoke.
And there's also a legitimate right to.
I'm not.
Even if you renounce it,
No,
there
no, no,
still
no.
is.
I'm not even discussing because the renouncing, it's a political decision. Has nothing to do with our rights.
Exactly.
We have the right to resist, but of course, legitimate targets.
Mhm.
I mean, a restaurant is not a legitimate target,
Yeah, but,
right?
but you choose not to engage in violence.
We choose not to. We have security coordination.
Mhm.
We don't come out proudly saying how many people have been detained and some of them even tortured, which I'm not very proud of saying that, but there are some reports suggesting it. I don't deal with security file though, because they wanted to attack Israel or attack Israelis, right? But that happens. And the American security, they know that. And that's why the American security are the most keen to keep this going. I mean, having a Palestinian government that eventually will take us to a state, right? And non-violent resistance, it's
BDS.
it's something that we support. BDS we support.
What would
Abbas
you-
used to be
yeah.
only, I know a few years ago, it was much more focused on settlement, just the
Listen,
settlement
we
enterprise. Has there been-
officially we don't boycott Israel, officially, but we support the campaign.
But what would you say?
Right? We boycott settlements, totally, and we ask for accountability on settlements. We're not asking any government to boycott Israel. We're not asking anyone to cut relations with Israel. But when it comes
But
to
you're happy if
settlements,
they do.
we're not going to say anything. The past 8 years, 3 countries cut off relations with Israel, and we didn't say anything.
What would you say to people? One, what's the point of BDS, and number two, to people who say it's anti-Semitic? What would you say to that?
So the BDS, it's a very broad movement. You cannot judge all BDS members because maybe some are anti-Semitic. Maybe some saw a chance to harm Jews. Maybe.
If that's not what you want.
But the reason why the BDS movement was created, or the BDS idea, I for example, I give a very personal statement. I don't like the BDS movement, but I do BDS all the way, right? Because what the BDS came out with was a response to regular citizens that would ask, what can we do? And BDS is very clear in its goals. End occupation that began in 1967, right of return of Palestinian refugees, equal rights for Palestinians in Israel. Is there any anti-Semitic thing there? I don't see. Now, the thing is, pro-Zionist groups, they've been trying to mix things in a way that you say, okay, if you don't recognize Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, you're anti-Semitic. And it's very easy to follow that line because before the Holocaust, you had a boycott of Jewish products, right? So it was part of the incitement that was made against the Jews in Europe. But the logic or the rationale we have in order to support a campaign for banning settlement products, for example, or for divesting from companies that are profiting from the Israeli occupation, has nothing to do with ownership. They could be Christian-owned, Muslim-owned. I mean, we're not fighting the occupation because they are Jews. They could be Christians or they could be Muslim. We will be fighting them still. We didn't choose our occupiers.
Are any of the negotiators members of Hamas, or is it just Fatah?
So just,
Are any of the negotiators members of Hamas, or is it just Fatah?
it's not just Fatah, but it's not. There are no members of Hamas. Now, that's another point.
Does that present a problem if in getting everybody to buy into something that might be agreed to?
Hamas has to be part of the solution, but they still have to make a strategic choice. Whether they are a Palestinian movement or they are the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. And I don't think they are clear with that. And I think so far they continue to be a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, because if they care about Palestine first, they would have implemented the agreements they signed on national reconciliation.
So unless they were to renounce the Muslim Brotherhood, they wouldn't be invited to the party.
No. I'm just talking about an issue of approach. Like, what's their approach now? Now, officially, everyone that sits with them, they're not against a two-state solution. But what they tell you, I've never talked to them, but when some people I know I talk to them, they say, why would I announce that I support the two-state solution? What did you, PLO, get out of it? They're right.
You don't want to show all your cards. You want to have you want to play
Yeah.
hardball when negotiating.
Definitely.
So to say you're willing to, if the Palestinians come to the table and say that they're already willing to give up 78% of historic Palestine, they're in such a weak bargaining position in anyways.
5%.
Yeah, like
I think the idea
Donald
of
Trump knows how to negotiate. He would never come and say, okay, I'll pay I'll only charge you 22% of what I should be getting or what was mine. You know, like, don't do that.
It was President Kennedy who never negotiated with those who say that what's mine is mine and what's yours is up to negotiation. and that's precisely what Israel does.
Yeah.
That's precisely what Israel does. So no, Hamas, they have to be part of the government. We have offered them to be part of the government, but I think they have this internal issue. I mean, I have no doubt that some people within Hamas, they would love to have national reconciliation. Hamas, by the way, is not Al-Qaeda. It's not. I mean, I personally don't like them. I don't like their agenda. I don't like their social issues, whatever. But they are not Daesh, right? Hamas, they have the same ideology as Erdogan, their main friend, the Turkish president. They have the same ideology as those ruling the country, where your country has the biggest military base in the region, Qatar. 100,000 soldiers. So they're the same. They're the same branch.
So how many people work in
Oh, that's
the
probably our
negotiating
taxi.
unit?
Our taxi?
Well, like
That's
the
right, we can taxi first.
Hello?
Sorry?
How many
Hi.
people work in the negotiating unit?
Okay, we'll be out in just a
Few.
few minutes.
Pardon?
Not many.
Not many.
There's no need to have.
And that's just the next question I was gonna ask, what is the negotiating unit doing now? Well,
No, I mean, I think the negotiating unit exists as a political message to be ready to negotiate. We do other stuff. The head of the negotiations department, Xavier Abu Eid Rawabi, is the Secretary General of the PLO. So we've been doing way more things than
okay.
negotiations.
Apparently 4 people were killed in that attack. There was a ramming attack in Jerusalem.
Now?
Yeah, like earlier, I got a notification like 45 minutes ago, and now it says that 4 people were killed and 15
Who did it?
injured.
Where in Jerusalem?
And the driver was shot.
Who was the driver?
It was a Palestinian.
I think Netanyahu is very happy.
Yeah, of course. He wants to
How long
see
has it been since something like that's happened?
Oh, wow.
Why?
It's been a while. Yeah.
But that's what I was
They were
telling you.
soldiers, Israeli
You mean the
soldiers.
Oh wow.
That was well placed.
At least it was a legitimate target, right?
Yeah, but we have to see if it was East Jerusalem or West Jerusalem.
It says.
The thing with attacking soldiers is that even though they are a legitimate target if they are in occupied territory, for Israeli society, all the children go to them.
Right.
So
There was the nonsense with the murderer, that he's everybody's child, the one who was found guilty of manslaughter.
yeah, it's so it's very sensitive for them when anything happens to a soldier, because they think immediately it may be. No, I don't think that. I mean, if you have, it's like what President Abbas told Hamas after the last Israeli aggression against Gaza. Said, if we're gonna go for war, let's go for war together. And if we're gonna go for peace, we have to go for peace together. But I can't be here talking about negotiations and you there preparing with some rockets that made nothing in Israel. I mean, if someone could give me the numbers of how much money the Israelis had to spend in rehabilitating some few streets that were partially damaged, Nothing. It's ridiculous. Like this quote unquote military strategy of Hamas. No, this strategy, I think it's a response to the failure of negotiations. I'm not questioning that part, but you cannot give Israel excuses to do what they do. I mean, every time, I remember, not now, but I remember the years of the Intifada. If there was a military attack against Israel, I would start praying they were not from my town.
Sure.
So.
Well, it's like us in the States, every time we hear about something, we hope it's not a Muslim
Yeah.
or an Arab, you
Yeah.
know, like, you're so happy when you find out that it wasn't, that it was like a crazy white person that killed a bunch of people in a shopping mall.
That's true.
Like Fort
That
Lauderdale.
has
Yeah.
mental issues. Actually, the thing with Jerusalem, it's like Palestinians are not allowed to have a car accident. Like I know people, they've been terrified because like last week, for example, there were 2 soldiers in a checkpoint that were rammed, but it was a car accident.
Yeah,
The
there was
literally
that woman who was either pregnant or a new mother who was shot. I think Gideon Levy wrote about it, where
Yeah.
they think that she probably just lost control of the vehicle and they just murdered her.
One of them was shot on her way from Mount of
It was
Olives
in East
to
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem, yeah, and they shot at her, and she had like her son who was like 7 years old with her. And it's like, who on earth wants to make an operation and takes her 7 years old son?
Right.
Like it's ridiculous. But then when you ask for accountability,
Palestinians are people, so it doesn't.
yeah,
It was in East
but when you
Jerusalem.
ask for accountability, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think you have to leave. I
Yeah,
brought you
yeah.
this, so I
Thank
think
you.
it's.
Thank you.
What-
Yeah, it was in East